Yes, guys, welcome back to Scouted on the Cannon podcast. We are bringing the aura back to Arsenal. Riccardo Calafiori. It's been confirmed by Fabrizio Romano that after Riccardo Calafiori's green light to move and contract, Arsenal made direct contact with Bologna. Talks between clubs have started. No issues on Calafiori's contract terms up to the clubs now. Arsenal currently ahead. No bid from Chelsea so far. That's the latest we have. I'm recording 11:30 on Thursday, the 4th of July to get this out. We just did a full hour looking at Calafiori's clips on a scouting network, so you can go look at that. You can watch that for free on Patreon on a 7-day free trial, or you can find it on YouTube memberships. But we are here to talk the profile, the deal. Is he the new left-sided Ben White? Is he the end of Zinchenko and Kivior? Is he Italian? Yes, he is. What a name. What a bunch of hair follicles as well. George, for those who don't know Calafiori, let's start with a sort of 60-second. What is he? What is a Riccardo Calafiori? Those who've never seen him before we sort of get into the profile overall.
My 6'2" lookalike. He is. He is. I mean, everybody wants to go to player comparisons, so I think he's in the Ake type of profile. He's kind of like that 1v1 clamper, so to speak, in terms of really being top in duels. And he's a really composed player. I think you're looking at somebody that can be over or hyper aggressive to his marker, but one thing is in his tackling technique, he's got a super aggressive sprint to the marker, but then he slows down and has a brilliant composure in the manner of where he's going to tackle. He's got some of those great defensive fundamentals of being a brilliant aerial presence, being very strong and broad. He controls situations brilliantly, never goes to ground too early, and he's somebody that I think as a whole has quite a bit of comfortability in those maybe triangle zones of out wide in the center of the pitch, as well as bursting through midfield. He's really got an ability to lead the build-up on his own down that left-hand side. Some things that he might need to work on, again, are probably that hyper-aggressive nature to markers. There's times when he can engage early, and there are times that sometimes his angles are off, arriving into wide spaces. But once he's stood up 1v1, he's elite. He's got incredible anticipation, #Carlos Cuesta, and he's also got, maybe a little bit of work to do. Once he carries more than 10 to 15 yards, he can lose control of it. The ball is kind of on the edge of his toe as opposed to his sole. So in those first 5 to 10 yards, he's brilliant. Great burst, great decision-making. But as soon as it extends a little bit beyond that, he struggles a bit. And so that's the point of difference between maybe a Ben White that people are maybe assuming. I see a lot of similarities here. To see a lot of buzzwords that I associate with Ben White. Those are the slight differences. I think Calafiori has got a much bigger intent in terms of carrying into midfield, and also probably a better ability to bait the press, in my opinion, than Ben White. More authority in that, certainly, but Ben probably has better cross variety in the final third and better dynamism over longer distances than Calafiori.
Yep. Probably a higher top speed. I would say also Calafiori in terms of, I want to really highlight that sort of the bravery to play. I think this is something we want to talk about maybe when we come to the tactics side of things. He backs himself. What you see in the clips when he carries, he's releasing late. And we can work on that. And, when he should release the decisions in the final third and so on. But what I love is that raw kind of clay of the bravery. He backs himself, man. He really, really does. The player himself, 22 years old, 6'2". He's played centre-back, left-back. He's also played left midfield as well. He came through at Roma. He was at Roma for 10 years in terms of his youth career. Then he went to Genoa on loan in 2022, left to go to Basel for a year, came back to Bologna. Now, obviously, he's back in the kind of the public consciousness with Italy at the Euros. One of the concerns about Calafiori, before we come back to the profile a little bit more, is on the injury stuff. But probably a little bit more about this than me. He had a big injury, a ligament injury, in October of 2018. And you could argue has sort of been recovering from that for quite a while after. There was sort of, another ligament injury, in the same way that when you have a big injury, naturally you're going to have other stuff as well going on afterwards as sort of knock-on effects of that. Muscular problems, muscle problems, it's all that sort of stuff. There are concerns about his injury history. In 23-24, he missed 2 games. So it feels like maybe with a knock. So it feels like maybe that those sort of years are behind it. But do you want to just go into that in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the mentality point. It's why I think he's in the top 1%. He had a career-threatening injury. Let's not downplay it here. I mean, every single ligament in his knee was torn, and he completely dislocated the left knee. It was a horror tackle. People, in fact, were saying, "Is his career over?" Very rarely people return not just to sport, but to walk the same after an injury like that. So let's not downplay how serious that injury. It's as serious as you can get. I don't think you get much more serious in soccer or football. So it's pretty amazing that he's come back from that. Yeah, I think it's difficult to know because, again, it's the worst possible injury that you could have. I can't downplay it enough. But, I think he's worked hard to get through that. He's not had an injury since then. He's clearly somebody that takes his career and his professional life very seriously. And the mentality and resilience that you have to come back from something like that, I think only really Aaron Ramsey is somebody that I look at as having such a career-threatening injury to really return to a top level in the past. And I mean, Calafiori's done that at 22, which is insane.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I think just imagining all the people writing "Don't call it soccer" in the comments. But I think Calafiori is a. When we talk, I joked at the beginning about aura and like sort of the composure, but I really do want to stress on that. I think like when you're learning a player, and I am learning a player, I think this is also something I want to just come to you in a second about what you do when you learn a player, because I think this is interesting. This link has come out of nowhere, but I think Juventus were interested, and the Arsenal stuff has come out kind of recently. I do think your kind of first instinct is something to hold on to. And when I watch him, there is just that composure, that calm, the way he receives the ball, the smoothness on the ball, all that sort of stuff. He just gives me that sense of like, okay, it's cool. He might make a mistake, but he'll recover from it, or he might make it, but he's not Mustafi. He's not gonna make a mistake and his game will fall apart after that. He seems to have that confidence and that sort of security. I'm still learning the player, as I say. Just quickly before we move on to the stats, when a link like this comes out, what do you do? Because I know we mentioned this on the scouting, but I think it'd be interesting for the YouTube audience as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own process. Personally, when I look at a player, I try to watch games both home and away against the title favorites, against relegation fodder, against a mid-table club, and then ideally the rival. So, like if it was Arsenal, I would watch, Spurs. I would watch Manchester City. Sorry, Manchester United could be the mid-table club, and then I would watch, a relegation team at Luton, and I think that gives me a broad sense of both what's he like in weaknesses and strengths. And then, I start looking at interviews. I try to learn about the player. I try to learn what makes him tick. Every player is different. You don't have to have one personality to succeed in this life and in this kind of in this career. So I try to see what makes him tick and see whether or not there's complementary parts. So, for example, next to Gabriel, who's an incredibly hyper-aggressive player, I'd like to have somebody that's aggressive, but also has a little bit of composure to his actions, and certainly somebody that has a technical composure. If I have somebody next to Saliba, I want somebody that's a little bit more leggy, somebody a little bit more dynamic. That's why Ben White and him work brilliantly. So when I look at relationships on the pitch, I look about what we might need, and I see down that side, I look at, Gabriel Martinelli. He is somebody that's a big space runner. Does he have the best, composure in terms of finding a pass, in terms of leading press baiting? Not necessarily. Calafiori does. Check. So just to kind of do that, I think that's like the best process you can make. And then obviously the more you watch, the more you learn.
Also, just while you were saying that, I thought another benefit of this, which maybe hasn't necessarily been discussed, is I think it will hopefully take a little bit of the pressure off Timber. I predict that Timber, and people are going to say, oh, so you hate Timber. No, I think he's going to struggle a little bit at the beginning of the season because he's coming back from such a massive injury and there's going to be such huge expectations on Timber. I think someone like a Calafiori coming in and kind of taking a little bit of that pressure out of that zone, maybe allowing Timber some time on the bench to sort of come into games. And I rate Timber so highly, but I was worried slightly that we're going to end up with pinning all of our left back hopes on Jurrien Timber. He has a couple of games where naturally he's coming back from his ACL. He's not going to be at his absolute best level. And then we start to worry and there's panic and there's pressure on Timber, whatever. I think it allows a bit of breathing space for Timber, which I think is really, really nice. Let's have a look.
Slightly different. Just really quickly, the build-up flexibility that Arsenal currently have right now is absolutely impeccable. Good luck to an opposition coach guessing how you're going to set up against Arsenal. Yeah. Because between Timber and Calafiori, between Gabriel, Saliba, Ben White,
Tomiyasu,
like there is a different level of flexibility and comfortability in different zones that you're going to have. I still think Timber is going to come back really strong and really quick, but the flexibility we now have means it doesn't matter. Even beyond that, how will opposition press you? How do they set up against a team that has multiple people that can operate both in midfield, wide, high in the half spaces, and lead build up from both sides? It's a nightmare.
Yep. Yeah, it just the amount of variety we have, and I think I can't remember if you mentioned it earlier, but Calafiori is what I was impressed by watching the clips just now, was how comfortable he seemed to be to move into those zones, and maybe for another difference from Ben White, the lack of angle bias when he's running, like he was willing from a left back slot to sort of go into the sort of the right half space as well, which was really exciting. Let's look at his stats then, Georgie boy. Lots of green, which is exciting. Lots of green equals good, I would say. Good numbers in terms of goals and assists. I think there's only a couple things to sort of pick out. The carry stuff is big. I think he plays a lot.
It's weird. This is where the stats are misleading. It should be the other way around. Like, he's a brilliant passer, don't get me wrong, but he is carry first. Let's make that clear.
There's a lot of carries. I think because this is compared to centre backs, it might be sort of skewing things ever so slightly. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, in terms of the clips we were watching, the carries were really, really exciting. Good numbers generally on the passing in terms of passes completed over loads of distances, etc. Obviously, a lot of this stuff I always feel is linked to how a team plays. Crosses, sort of quite high up on the list from a centre-back position, I suppose you could say that. Key passes is nice and high for him, and assists as well, sort of expected.
Because he's really early in terms of finding that ball into the middle of the park. That's really, really key for him.
Yeah, and I think from such a deep position to have those kind of numbers, and 0.65 key passes per 90 for a centre back, it's pretty good. A little bit further down, shot creating actions, goal creating actions with a live ball pass, etc., all looking really, really good. Again, this is someone who can contribute in the final third from deep and has the security as a defender, as George was saying earlier, in terms of, you didn't use the phrase stutter step earlier, but I use that and I'm going to use it in terms of the, I'm going to nick it off you. But yeah,
that's in the Patreon for those that really want to hear about it.
That's for the patrons and YouTube members. You can't have that on YouTube.
Which you can do for free, by the way, for a free trial.
But yeah, I think with the defensive security, that makes these numbers all the more exciting, if that makes sense. And then just coming down a little bit further here, sort of passes, blocks, interceptions, and tackle interception numbers showing that security as well. But yeah, generally, lots of green, George, which equals good.
Yeah. Very good. And you know what?
Also the aerial numbers as well, so it was the last thing.
Yeah, the one thing that I like to talk about, and people get nutty about the quality comparisons, but he's a baby Sergio Ramos that we need to turn into Maldini. And what I mean is that, he's somebody that's a huge leadership profile, that's really dominant in duels and can lead your build-up. Like, he can be hyper-aggressive. And one of the best things about Maldini, anyone who's lucky enough to be able to really catch film and watch him, is that...
The headband. He's got it.
Sure, there's that. But, he was a little bit physically capped in terms of his ability to really compete in those longer distances, but his usage of his frame and his legs and his body was probably the best I've ever seen. And that transition is kind of what I think Calafiori would really do well to transition to. He's somebody that is incredibly brave, incredibly pushing the action. If it's the 97th minute, he believes he can score, even though it's 2-1. He has that. And he just needs to be able to use his frame a little bit better and also just tweak some of the hyper aggressiveness. But in terms of his ability in 1v1 duels, again, I would argue he probably walks in and really competes with Tommy 1v1 in terms of a dueling aspect. You're going to start having debates. Who's our best dueler, Calafiori or Tomiyasu?
There you go. High praise. Let's move on to the tactical side of things and how he might be sort of set up in our team. We'll come to what this all means for Zinchenko and Tomiyasu and Kivior and LeBron's legacy, or whatever it might be. But I think it's such a stupid joke. But yeah, I think it's important to look at him from a tactical perspective, where he might be, with the sort of zones he might operate in as well. So let's have a look at that. Are you going to share your screen? There we go.
I know, that was the setup. And so yes, this is our typical set. I'm going to put everybody back in their normal positions.
What's wrong with 4-4-2? Do you know what I mean?
No, 100%. And look, if people noticed, I
Don't
have
think
put
I haven't
Timber.
snuck to. Yeah, I just noticed Timber at left central midfield.
I have to. Um, you know,
Let's go, man.
look, I think at times we've basically done this. You know, I'll be nice. I'll put Thomas Partey back, and we'll actually start to discuss what maybe the best, in theory position is. We have Declan Rice up here, and we've got Thomas Partey in the middle. This is actually a brilliant team, mate. Like, it's actually so tall and it's so balanced. But Calafiori would probably walk in the quote unquote left back spot. He's not a traditional left back. He's not going to be an overlapper. But one thing with Calafiori is that he's able to really lead the build up. And when we start to really transition into the final third, we've got our typical kind of almost box midfield that we are really accustomed to here. Thomas Partey will kind of pop in terms of the Kivior rule that we found in January to, I'd say, about March, where we maybe found at times Ben White to sneak in, with Calafiori being kind of that left center back in a 3 that can push up and push beyond, with Declan maybe operating as that 8. You're going to find huge comfortability here. This is somebody that can go a little bit higher into the half spaces while Declan holds. He carries that flexibility. You're going to find he's somebody. Yes, and you are going to find if Declan will hold, and there are times to push Martinelli inside with Calafiore coming on the outside. The problem is when he's in these zones, again, the crossing from these areas from Calafiore can be inconsistent. It is a point of improvement, and his flexibility to really carry from deep. He's a very strong carrier, but again, in those first 5 to 10 yards, if you're asking him to make up ground from here, to go on the outside to push Martinelli inside, he's going to struggle. It is something that he struggles with. I think for the most part, you're going to find him in most of his carries. He likes to burst through the middle, and he likes to carry through the middle. So that's the first iteration that you might see. And instead of Ben White, who has probably a less of a complementary to this, you might find Jurrien Timber be a little bit better in terms of the inverted right back, offering this kind of change where Timber would probably be better on the inside in this kind of inverted role.
But I liked from the clips was seeing how often Calafiori did come inside, and also, by the way, would almost go to the other side. That's what excited me.
So you're getting ahead of me, because this is the next change that I was gonna try to do. So obviously we know the Ben White change, where instead of we'd probably actually be able to get away with not having Thomas Partey anchor in this sense. And so with Calafiori coming inside, this is an opportunity for us to have our very typical back 3 that we know and love. And instead of that, we can kind of drop Thomas Partey for maybe these kind of mid-block situations and include another more maybe adventurous. And I've put ESR and Vieira because they offer you something different. Either or could work in this area. But Calafiori has an opportunity to come inside. He can receive from these areas. He's done it brilliantly. I would worry if I was Zinchenko, because he's got comfortability in terms of being that inverted center back type. Carries that flexibility brilliantly. The last kind of iteration that I want to show before we stop sharing the screen is, and everybody don't cry, but there is an opportunity that Gabriel can take a rest here. And the one thing that you would maybe look at is you might have the situation where I'm going to bring out another player here, and we'll make this Jurrien Timber. And what you might have is a really solid back 3 in which you've got Timber being able to invert.
How do you expect to score? How do you expect to score against that?
It's brilliant. And I mean, this is probably the exciting. Obviously, we're not advocating for Gabriel to leave the team, but this is just an example of the build-up flexibility that
Calm down in the comments. It's just an option.
Exactly. It's just an option, and it's something that we can see, right? And it gets Saliba in a central center back role. You've got now 2 center backs that are really jumpy, that can come out wide really beautifully. Nice. And you've got also a midfield pivot that's kind of brilliant in terms of its ability to hold and allow the 8s to do their best work, right? So as a whole, just to kind of bring what we'll probably see and what's most likely is I think that we'll probably end up seeing not really Yuri and Timber starting. I think our strongest lineup is a Thomas Partey, Declan Rice pivot. And, we'll have to get everybody out here. But what you'll see, very typical, is our typical 4-4-2. Calafiori is very able to operate in a pressing function. And we'll have this typical 4-4-2 out of possession, which, again, can kind of transition into Calafiori being a little bit higher. We'll have Martinelli on the touchline. We'll have Bukayo Saka touchline. We'll prop everybody up, and we'll have Kai Havertz kind of being able to have that free role. When Declan pushes up, Calafiori could have that ability to shift, and we might see Ben White pop up inside or have it as Yuri and Timber, but you might see this lopsided 3-2-5 where which we saw with Kivior brilliantly. And Calafiori has that ability to be really excellent in wide channels, really excellent in the middle of the park, as well as deep. He's got that flexibility of the triangle, which is what is quite exciting.
And for an opposition, how do you solve the we need to quadruple up on Saka question while Arsenal are lopsided on the left? And that's been a thing that's been a concern this year. Very good. Okay, well, the elephant in the room is that this probably spells the end for one of... I will include Tomiyasu in this because it's only fair. I don't think it does, by the way, but I will include Tomiyasu in this, even though I don't think it's fair.
One of the left footers, ideally.
Yeah, or left-sided options, or might spell the end for Tomiyasu's time there, what that might mean. Anyway, for Kivior or Zinchenko, most likely, but we'll also put Tomiyasu in the list. Here's my position on this. I think if Mikel had the choice, Zinchenko would go, but I think Kivior will go, if that makes sense. I actually
think
the
more value and interest
because he's more valuable. There's an option. I think Juventus having a look at him. I've seen a lot more links to him. There was a message. He texted me today, Mikel. I actually have Mikel's number, or what someone told me was Mikel's number, which is hilarious. So I should text him. There was an interview with Mikel on ESPN today where he was talking about the market being tricky, where you might have to try different sort of scenarios or whatever, that sort of stuff. And I think this is one of those situations where it might be the end for Kivior. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, I think ideally when you look at it, he's 6'2", carries his best work at left center back, but is flexible to have that inverted role. He can be an inverted center back in the John Stones. He can be a central center back, and he's a left-footed option that can lead the build-up on his own. So I think ideally when you're looking at it, Zinchenko has probably got the most specific profile, but I'm wondering where's the role for you if you've got somebody like Calafiori who can absolutely lead the build-up and operate in terms of receiving in a pivot brilliantly. He's done it for Juventus. He's got a really soft touch, and I think he's got a much better complement of providing much of the progression Zinchenko could do, but with all the defensive security you ail with Zinchenko. Ultimately, Kivior is somebody that I think carries the better market demand, and that's why he's going first. But I do think that ultimately you're looking at Calafiori stepping in, and I do think, by the way, really pushing to start, if not starting off right away, will work to be one of our starting 11 players. He's got that potential. I think it's very difficult for me to look at Calafiori's quality and say that that's not a starter. I do think he's raw. I do think he will take a little bit to tweak. We talked about that hyper aggressiveness, that carrying. Sometimes he's loose in the carry and longer carries. Nothing uncoachable, completely coachable. And I think in 2 to 3 years, we've got one of the better left-footed left center backs in the world. And he's going to really ask questions of Gabriel, in my opinion. I've always felt that Kivior had the talent to, but not the personality. Calafiori has the personality and the talent to do it.
And this is what I've been saying about Kivior for a while. I don't have question marks. Similar with Fabio Vieira, I don't have question marks about the talent. There's things they can improve, there's things they can't improve. Do I think they don't have the talent to play in a first team for Arsenal? No. The thing always separating the very, very top players, your Kevin De Bruyne's from the next rung down. Yes, there's a bit of talent, of course it is. But if you're playing in the Premier League for a Chelsea or an Arsenal or a United or whatever, the reason you're at City and you're doing that and you're winning titles every season, it's what's going on in here. And it's the personality. And that's what I like. It's the ability, get up and do the right thing every day to, bounce back from mistakes and defeats and all that sort of stuff and go again and go again and go again. And what I loved about Calafiori from when we were watching is that personality. It's the it's
It's the
as
special sauce, and I really
yeah.
want to end on that, because when people always ask me, they always say like, "What's the superpower?" I love giving a superpower of a
Mm,
player. Fofana was incredibly vertical. He's got really progressive passing. Osimhen, a box presence.
mm,
What is Calafiori's superpower? It's his mentality.
mm,
He is somebody that will strut into the Bernabeu and make it his home. He is somebody that will never give up. He's an incredible leader. He's in the top 1% of mental profiles I have seen, not just in his ability in 1v1 duels, but his ability to not let the environment dictate his actions.
mm.
He is somebody that, to come back from the injury that he had, and again, I do want to end on this because I think it's what's contributed to his journey. He is so resilient. And you see that word in every action that he does.
Mm.
If it's a duel, he's resilient not to lose it. In terms of his passing and his bravery between the lines, he's resilient to continue to press. He's brave. He takes responsibility. And that's why I think ultimately, whenever you watch a team with Calafiori, your eyes go to him, because he demands respect,
Yep.
responsibility, and he demands the attention, much in the same way that I think we love aspects of William Saliba. And yes, that could be shortly worded down into the four-letter word aura, but it's
But
it's
that's what it is.
why that's what it is.
I said this in the scouting, mate. There's a reason everyone's looked at him in Euro 2024 and gone, it's
Wow.
not the headband. It's partly the headband, but there is that, and it's that kind of, when you have that confidence in all of his actions and in the way he approaches the game and the bravery, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And I also think, just from just reflecting on what Mikel was saying today, because he was talking about the margins we have to win the league, and what do we need to win the league. You will need a bit more belief. You will need an injection of someone who's going to walk in and say, right, we're winning the league, are we? Come on then, let's do it. And I'm going to help you, but I'm not coming in and going, oh my God, all these guys, Martin Erdig, oh my God, Declan Rice, wow. He's coming in and going,
Yeah.
right, we're going to win the league. And that's another potential benefit to this deal. Just to sort of conclude it, I think we sort of did this in the scouting as well, but I think we should say this here. Would you just give us a rundown again of, very, very quickly, strengths and weaknesses, just for the people who don't know the player? So strengths, we're saying aerial capacity, we're saying smoothness on the ball and his reception. I think on both, we haven't necessarily mentioned yet how he's not ambipedal, but he is.
He doesn't
He
play with
he can use his right foot. It's not
beautifully.
complete
In fact, we
weakness.
saw a beautiful finish, weak foot,
Yeah,
in terms of the challenge. Like
nice
he's
chip.
able to use it. Again, he's really composed. He's got this brilliant ability to stutter step, be very aggressive to his marker, stutter step to slow down, and then be
Yep,
composed in the challenge.
yep,
That jumps out at you. Aerial ability jumps out at
yep.
you. His ability to press bait and lead the press on his own jumps out at you. And his mentality to constantly demand respect and responsibility in difficult situations and situations under control, they all jump out at you. I think in terms of
Mhm.
some of the weaknesses, if we were to really quickly rattle them off, at times he can be early to engage. He can be hyper aggressive. He gets there because his anticipation is brilliant, but there are times he engages early. Just needs to tweak it, especially in wide zones. I think there are times when his angles are a little bit off. In the carry, he's brilliant in the first 5 to 10 yards. But again, as we approach to the 20-yard mark and a little bit beyond, the ball can seem like it's at the end of his toe, not at the end of his
Mm.
sole. And so it can be a little bit stretched. And lastly, in the final third, when we talk about crossing, brilliant variety and repertoire of passes, but the consistency of action in those final third, especially on the overlap, can be left wanting at times, especially in his delivery of whipped balls. They don't always reach the marker, and there's not a ton of quality. It doesn't jump out at the page. He's not Davies in that aspect. He can work on that.
Yep, yep, yep. Final thing. So we've there's a lot of sort of different reporting about it. I'd probably, there might even be something out before this even comes out about what the actual deal is going to be. Rumored
Yeah,
around 50 million, 60 million, something around there, which
yeah.
feels fair to me. But the wages also, in terms of what's being
It's
touted,
Kivior's wage.
it's something like 60K, which I
It's
was really,
Kivior's wage.
really shocked by. So there's a
He's
lot
only on
of
14K at Bologna. I think
right,
that's why.
man. So we're quadrupling his wages for him. So that's earth changing for him, but obviously it's a really good deal for us. So yeah, I think financially that's not a crazy thing, and there's no reason to believe if it didn't work out in 2 to 3 years time we couldn't get the same price, if not more. So I think from that sort of perspective it's looking good. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. If you do want to check us out, look at all the clips, you can check that out from the link in the description. You can check out all the other episodes of Scouted. We did one on Nico Williams this week. Mad. Did one on Nico Williams this week, and we've done ones on Bruno Guimaraes and Yusuf Fofana and loads of other players. And as always, if there's any other links, we will do that. I'm actually away next week, so if any other links come out, you might have to wait for me to do it, but I'm sure George will be able to do it with someone else equally as competent, perhaps more competent. Right, we'll finish there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here on the Cannon Podcast. Main podcast out on Monday. Thanks for keeping it Arsenal. Peace.